You may or may not know that our Roman calendar, most of the names of the month come from Roman gods. So January is named after the god Janus, Janus, and Janus is portrayed as having two faces, one in the front and one in the back, which is very appropriate for January, which is the beginning of the new year in our calendar. There are other calendars. And that one face facing forward and one face facing back symbolizes transitions. So in Roman religion and myth, Janus is the god of beginnings and endings, gates, transitions, doorways, passages, and thresholds. So Janus holds the key to the gateway between what was and what is to come, and the liminal space of transitioning from one thing to another. So I don't know if you know the word liminal, L-I-M-I-N-A-L. I think it's a beautiful word. Sometimes I just make lists of words that I think are beautiful, and that's one of them, because what it means is the in-between space. So it might be the in-between space between this life and the afterlife, the in-between space between awake and asleep, the in-between space between yesterday and today. So it's about transformation. And it's kind of interesting because sometimes in New Thought writings, there are things like, you should forget about the past because the present moment is all there is. And I don't remember the exact quote, but there's some meme about when you drive, you're not supposed to look in the rear view mirror, you look in front of you. But you know, we have a rear view mirror for a purpose. And if you think about it, who I am now and today is the result of what I did in the past and all of the things that got me from where I was to where I am now. So in January, which is the beginning of a new year, I don't always do this on New Year's Eve, but sometime in January, I like to do a kind of personal ritual of reflecting where I came from, what I'm grateful for, what I accomplished, what I learned, who I became, so that I can do more of the things that I'm grateful for, the things that brought me joy or peace or happiness, to build upon what I've already done. And at the same time, I also like to reflect on what sometimes people consider negative, the regrets I have, the things that I meant to do and didn't, the things that I left unfinished, the regrets I have for what I wished I had said or done, or maybe what I wished I had not said or done. And instead of saying, oh, you know, that's the past, just let it go, it's all good. You know, it's not true that everything is all good. Sometimes we make mistakes, and sometimes we do things intentionally or not that hurt people. And so if we just forget about it, you know what's going to happen? We're doomed to repeat the same thing. That's what karma is all about. Karma is like an insurance policy that says when we need to learn something, we will keep either choosing or drawing to ourselves people, places, and things that give us the opportunity to learn a lesson. So it's kind of like going through school. If there's something that you don't learn, you might have to repeat a class or repeat a grade. Well, our life is like that too. Our life is like a schoolroom. So when there's something that we need to learn, how we learn is not by just forgetting about something. It's evaluating, okay, what could I have done better? What could I have done differently? What kind of strengths do I have that I can bring to this situation and do better? And in doing that, that's how we are able to grow and develop ourselves. So in order to do that, that liminal space can be helpful. So if you look at a calendar, you have these squares that represent days. And if you just look at the calendar, it looks like they're all these separate squares, like what day is today, Sunday? If you looked at the calendar, Saturday's square is separated by a line from today's square, which is separated by tomorrow's square. But our days are not really like that. You know, think about how you got from being in the hall to in here. You didn't just transport from being out there to being in here. You walked through the door. And maybe the door was open, maybe you opened the door, maybe someone opened the door for you, but somehow you had to cross that threshold to get into this room. And that threshold in our lives and in our days, between yesterday and today, and between today and tomorrow, is called sleep, physiologically. Metaphysically, or psychically, or psychologically, it's called dreams and dreaming. And whether you remember your dreams or not, we all dream every night, and that dreaming time, that liminal space between one day and the next, gives us an opportunity to reflect on what we learned, what we did well, maybe what we could have done differently. And that's why I am such a lover of dreams, because they help me to grow and develop and understand myself. They come from the inner self, what some people call the soul, what some people call the subconscious mind. And the inner self has a kind of perspective that our conscious mind doesn't always have. The perspective that we have a purpose and we're here to learn, and that there's more to us than just our physical senses and our physical body. So even if you don't remember dreams, we can do that similar kind of reflection in our waking state. But we have to allow space to do that. We can't just jump from one thing to another and plunge from one experience to the next without some type of time and space to reflect. Last week, Reverend Polly talked about the winter. It was so freezing cold, below freezing cold, that we were all Zooming, and she talked about the beauty of winter because it allows us that time for space and rest and reflection and going inward. In my opinion and experience, we need that all the time, not just in the winter. It can be kind of challenging in our society because we're very focused on doing and action and experience, and not so focused on space and quiet and stillness and silence. So I was thinking about this, and it was kind of funny. I was actually upstairs in this building walking around the track on one of the days that it was cold. And there were a number of other people who were walking. And there were two people, I was kind of curious about what their relationship was. It was an older gentleman and probably millennial-age woman. And she was dressed kind of like Barbie. She had her hair in a high ponytail and had pink leggings. And I didn't know if she was his personal trainer or daughter or who knows. But I mean, my mind goes in those kinds of questions. And you know, I didn't tap them on the shoulder and say, how do you know each other? But anyway, they're going around the track and she's talking nonstop the whole time they're going around the track. And then I went into an exercise class, also in the room upstairs, and there's a glass window there so you can see the track. And from the exercise class, I see them going around and she's still talking. And I'm wondering, okay, is he actually listening to what she's saying? Does she have any idea that there's no space in between one thing that she's saying and the next? So is she even allowing herself and him time to hear and reflect on what she's saying? And I wasn't thinking this critically. I was thinking it because my experience sometimes of being with people who talk like that without any pause, I kind of wait for a pause to be able to say something. But what do you do when there is no pause? And so I just sit there and, you know, other people will talk, and finally, you know, what I was going to say, it's like, it's moved on to another subject, and so I just never get to say it. And my point here is that sometimes we do that with ourselves. If we have so many chattery thoughts going on in our brain that we don't allow ourselves time to rest and reflect, it's kind of hard to have self-understanding. And so that's one of the benefits of meditation. It's one of the benefits of allowing some time and space at the end of the day to reflect on, what am I grateful for? What did I learn? How did I grow? How did I develop? So then I can make some choices about what am I going to do for my future. So I'll give you a couple of simple examples, some physical examples. Somebody just mentioned a documentary, which I haven't seen yet, but now I want to, on food, called The Twin Experiment. So I don't know if you do this, but sometimes I wake up in the morning and I feel really good, and so I reflect on, okay, what did I do yesterday? And oftentimes I feel good because the last thing I had to eat was 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and I allowed all my food to digest before I went to sleep, and I drank plenty of water. Or sometimes I wake up feeling kind of foggy-headed, not exactly a headache, but just kind of like there's cotton or something in my head. And I think, you know what? I had something to eat right before I went to bed, and so I went to sleep. I didn't have time to digest, and so all of that junk is now still in my system. Or maybe it was so cold that I didn't get outside and go for a walk. And so when I reflect on those things, then I can make better decisions for today. Okay, I am going to not eat after a certain time. I am going to get outside in the sun, even if it is freezing cold outside, and just wear 50 million layers to stay warm. And we can do similar kinds of reflections with our attitudes about things. Maybe this has been kind of a recurring theme in my life. When I was a kid, I was naturally quiet anyway, and I talked about this before, a middle child with very talkative older sister, very talkative younger sister, and so my MO was just not to say anything a lot of times. And then I was also taught not to talk about some things that were challenging in our family, like when my sister was in a psychiatric hospital, we were not allowed to tell anyone. And so I had dreams during that period in my life that I was trying to say something, and there was no sound coming out of my mouth, and sometimes in the dreams I would actually try to scream and there was no sound that came out of my mouth. And I had no idea what that was about, but now looking back over it, I really needed to express my emotions, and I didn't have a voice in my waking state, so my dreams were telling me that was bothersome to me. And so when I became aware of that as an adult, I started looking to see, okay, where am I doing that now? And making choices to speak up, even if it's challenging. And so I don't have those dreams anymore. So that's the benefit of reflection, is that it helps us to make better choices. So one final threshold that I want to talk about, actually yesterday was the astrological cusp between Capricorn and Aquarius. So an astrological cusp is when you go from one sign to the next. And there is an actual time when it transitions from one sign to the next, but there is also that kind of liminal space where there's a little bit of a bleed over. And Capricorn, if you know anything about astrology, the symbol of that is the mountain goat. And so this mountain goat works hard to get up the mountain and finally gets to the top. And I don't know if anyone here is a Capricorn or has strong Capricorn influence, but Capricorns are like that. They work hard, they push hard, Their life is a lot about accomplishment and doing. And if you've ever climbed a mountain, there is a certain point. When I was in college, I learned how to climb mountains in New Hampshire. And when I was first doing mountain climbing, I wasn't really in that great a shape. I was kind of a bookworm, not an athletic kind of person. So it was kind of hard going up this rocky mountain in New Hampshire, taking one step at a time, and getting tired and wondering when it's ever going to end. And then all of a sudden, there's a tree line. So a tree line is when you reach a certain altitude that the trees can't grow anymore. And so you get to the tree line, and all of a sudden, it's like being in heaven. You can see all of the other mountain peaks, you can see all around, you can see the sky. And from that vantage point at the top of the mountain, then your vision opens up. So that's very similar to the transition between Capricorn and Aquarius. Capricorn is that mountain goat that works hard and puts out a lot of effort. And Aquarius is all about being visionary. Like Thomas Paine was an Aquarian, Mozart was an Aquarian, FDR was an Aquarian, Oprah Winfrey's an Aquarian. And the idea of how hard work and all of the things that we accomplish helps us to have a greater vision, that applies to all of us, no matter what your astrological sign is. So I think it's important to realize that in order for us to be the best that we can be, to have the kind of fulfillment that we want to have, to allow ourselves that time and space to reflect on the in-between times, helps us to have the most and be the most. So I hope that whether you used your New Year's Eve to do this or not, that you can spend some time in this January time of reflecting back, seeing where you are now, and making some choices for the future. Thank you.